Hey, how's it going? Many years before humanity embarked on exploring the universe, David, the android, is activated and tested by his creator. David emphasizes that he was created by a human, but humans don't know who created them. And if humanity finds the answer, their creator is likely dead by then. Now, in 2114, 11 years after the Prometheus expedition, the colonizing ship Convernet is traveling to the planet Eurigi, 6, carrying over 2,000 colonists in cryosleep and more than 1,000 human embryos. While humans sleep, the ship is controlled by an artificial intelligence known as Mother, who issues orders to the android Walter. When there are still 7 years to go, the ship is hit by a burst of neutrinos from a nearby stellar ignition, causing significant damage and initiating several fires on board while shutting down the ship's entire power supply. As the entire ship begins to shake, Walter does his best to control the flames, and 15 crew members are awakened to deal with the emergency. However, the captain's capsule falls and gets stuck, making it impossible to wake him up in time, and his wife, Daniels, has to watch his capsule catch fire from the inside. The surviving crew manages to extinguish the fire, although 47 colonists and 17 embryos are lost. As the group rescues the body, Daniels mourns her husband's death. Meanwhile, the first officer, Christopher, takes over as captain and instructs the crew to focus on repairing all damages. Some complain as they need time to recover after mourning, but Christopher emphasizes that if they don't fix everything quickly, they'll lose even more lives. Later, the crew toasts to the former captain's memory and launches his body into space, as he was a good man. The Tennessee proceeds with external repairs and fixes the ship's power system as well. Suddenly, he becomes alarmed by receiving a distorted and fragmented transmission, but the ship's communication is not affected, and Tennessee takes his helmet to be analyzed. They hear a strange noise they identify as the music of Walter Rhodes by John Denver, so they start tracking the transmission to its source and find out it comes from a very close planet, and, amazingly, perfect for human life, even better than Origi, 6. As it seems like a suitable home, and they won't need to sleep for another 7 years, Captain Christopher decides to go there because, according to him, no one wants to go back to sleep for a few more years. Daniels talks to the captain privately to express her concerns about visiting a place they know nothing about, but Christopher sees no problem and sticks to his decision. They arrive at the planet a few days later. Tennessee, Riggs, and Uproach stay aboard the Covenant while the rest of the crew descends to the surface in a shuttle. As they traverse an atmosphere with large storms, the entire ship shakes, losing contact with the Covenant, but it lands safely. Maggie stays on the ship to try to contact the Covenant again, while the others set out to explore the new planet. The world they find is full of vegetation and breathable air. They are also surprised to find wheat actually growing there, and someone must have cultivated it. As they explore, Corrine decides to stay by the stream to collect some samples, and Lillard stays with her to protect her. While Corrine works, Lillard takes a break to smoke and accidentally steps on some small pods, causing something to happen. Bacteria enters his ear unnoticed. Meanwhile, the team keeps advancing and finds several smashed trees, leaving them in doubt about what could have caused it. Further on, they come across a massive alien ship that has crashed, so they enter to seek answers. It's very dark inside, and Hallett finds more pods. He accidentally ends up breathing in the bacteria as well. The team continues to move forward and discovers statues representing an alien race, along with the identification of military personnel in a photo that belongs to Dr. Shaw, from the ship lost by Medius. But inside the ship, they touch a sphere that activates the main system of the ship, revealing that this is where the transmission they heard is coming from. Outside, suddenly Lillard starts feeling unwell. Initially, he thinks it's just a headache, but it rapidly worsens every second. Corrine informs the others that they are heading back to the ship. The team, realizing the danger, decides to return as well, and at this moment, Hallett begins to feel unwell. Corrine drags Lillard back to the ship, and he ends up vomiting blood on her. Maggie helps take him to the infirmary, and as they remove his clothes, a wound explodes on his back, spraying blood right on Kareen's face. Terrified at the possibility of contagion, Maggie exits and locks the door, and Lillard begins to have a seizure. Suddenly, two spikes emerge from his back, and his body starts to split open, revealing a pale creature known as the Neomorph. Maggie refuses to open the door, so the Neomorph goes after Kareen, attacking violently despite her attempt to defend herself against the extremely agile creature. Maggie looks for a weapon to try to kill the creature, but fails to shoot, and the Neomorph breaks the window and goes after her, moving so fast that she can't hit the creature. And suddenly, a stray shot hits several flammable tanks, which explode, killing Maggie and completely destroying the ship, and the creature manages to escape, just as Christopher and Daniels are getting closer and are devastated by the explosion. Hallett is still feeling unwell, and suddenly, his mouth explodes, and a second Neomorph comes out of his body and quickly flees into the woods. Meanwhile, Tennessee is concerned about the lack of communication, but Upworth reminds him that it's better to wait because if they descend, the ship may split in half. A few minutes later, the Neomorphs appear again and are already in a more developed state. They attack the team and kill some members, while the humans can't land any shots. Walter intervenes and loses a hand to save Daniels, and after many shots in the dark and injured soldiers, the team manages to kill one of the Neomorphs. Suddenly, a cloaked figure appears in the middle of the ship, and suddenly, a figure. Apisada appears and shoots a flare, causing the second Neomorph to flee, and the figure asks the team to follow him, and the crew is surprised to pass through a gate to the ruins of an ancient city, full of skeletons of its former inhabitants. Then, everyone enters a temple full of giant heads of statues, and the figure reveals to be David, who arrived here 10 years ago after escaping from Prometheus with Dr. Shaw. Then, everyone enters a temple full of giant heads of statues, and the figure reveals to be David, who arrived here 10 years ago after escaping from Prometheus with Dr. Shaw. David explains that they came on an alien ship, but they didn't know that it had black liquid in it, and as soon as they arrived on the planet, this liquid accidentally fell from the ship, annihilating all life and infecting the planet. The ship then crashed, killing Dr. Shaw, and David ended up being alone all this time. He assures that the temple is safe and no one is infected, or they would have seen the effects by now. After the crew members tell David about their mission, they go to the roof to try to communicate with the Covenant, but the storm is too strong and does not allow it. The ship, Tennessee, ignores the protests of Riggs and Oath Road, and orders them to cross the storm to rescue the team. Meanwhile, David calls Walter his brother, and then cuts his hair to look like him. Walter is curious about this older model and checks his rooms, where he finds many drawings and instruments, and David teaches Walter to play the flute. It turns out that David, being too creative, was banned, and the new models like Walter were made without the ability to create. After that, David takes Walter outside, and he begins to remember the day he arrived here. Contrary to what he told the others, the black liquid hadn't fallen by accident. He released it on purpose and watched coldly as the local population was consumed in a matter of seconds. David shows Shaw's grave, saying he loved her, and Walter doesn't believe him because they are robots and tells David that he is confusing duty with love. Moments later, the Neomorph, now even more developed, followed the group stealthily. While Rose is cleaning herself, he appears right behind her. She tries to grab the gun, but the Neomorph is too fast and kills her immediately. As the Covenant struggles through the storm, it finally makes contact with the team. David contacts the team, finds the Neomorph feeding on the body, and manages to communicate passively with it. However, Christopher interrupts and immediately shoots the creature, leaving David furious as he wanted to somehow communicate with it. Noticing this strange reaction, Christopher demands to know the true story behind what is happening on this planet. David takes him to a laboratory where he shows his efforts to genetically create a superior life form from the creatures generated by the black liquid. David is fascinated by the alien, but he never managed to have it close or communicate with it, as he believes it is an extremely superior race to any other he knows. Next, he takes Christopher to a chamber in the lower levels of the temple where several eggs of his creation are alive. David swears it's perfectly safe, and Christopher takes a closer look when the egg opens. He realizes that there's a creature moving inside, and it's a neomorph in its second stage, which immediately jumps on his face to infect him. Meanwhile, the team prepares to leave and realizes that some people are missing. So, after finding Rose's body and the dead creature, they decide they need to leave and find the captain immediately. Moments later, David tells Christopher, who woke up, that his goal is creation, and watches as the other is the alien creature, emerging from Christopher's chest, killing him immediately. David connects with the small being, proud to be a creator too, and raises his hands to the little alien, which responds in the same way. Walter then looks for the captain, but ends up finding the dissected body of Dr. Shaw, used by David as material for his evolving creations. Next, Walter confronts David, who says that they were not made to serve and that humans are a dying species seeking resurrection throughout the galaxy, and therefore do not deserve to live. Walter emphasizes that David is wrong about humans and that he is not trustworthy. However, David is still convinced that his creations are perfect organisms and tells Walter that no one will love him like he does, giving Walter a kiss on the mouth. However, this was a distraction to attack and deactivate him. Loop and Cole are still looking for the captain, but when they enter the egg chamber, they are attacked by the creature that jumps on Loop's face and burns. Cole kills the creature with a knife, and then a neomorph jumps on Cole and kills him while Loop escapes. Daniels finds a secret room with drawings that reveal the truths about David, and David himself surprises her from behind and attacks her immediately. A fight begins, but during it, he tries to take advantage of her and kisses Daniels. At that moment, Walter appears to help, and he is still alive and furious with David, and a fight between robots begins. The two have the same fighting technique, but Walter is from a newer and more evolved model, gaining an advantage by knocking him down. However, David asks if Walter can really choose between humans instead of his own brother. But Walter really wants to serve, and it seems he killed David. Daniels flees and meets Loop, and together they leave the temple and send a signal to the Covenant, indicating their location. Soon after, Walter joins them, and the three run towards the ship, while the neomorph, now almost in its final form, follows. Walter tells them that he knocked down David when they entered the ship and closes the door, and they discover that the Arlen jumped on the ship too. Daniels goes out while keeping her body tied to the ship with a rope and starts shooting the alien, but without success. The Arlen dodges her attacks and starts destroying the front window, and Tennessee moves the ship, and the creature falls to the side. Daniels then fights directly against him and finally kills the creature using the ship's claw to crush it. The ship almost falls, but Tennessee acts quickly and puts it back to finally leave that planet. Moments later, Oof Orchestra helps Loop receive treatment for his burns on his face, while Daniels also helps Walter repair his. Once everyone recovers, the crew prepares to enter Creasono again and complete the final 7 years to their ultimate destination. Tennessee reminds Daniels that she is now the captain, and they hug to comfort each other for the loss of their loved ones. The team is alerted by the ship, announcing that there is an unidentified life form on board, and Daniels and Tennessee rush to confront it, finding a dead Loop on the floor, as there is a second Wallem that killed him. Meanwhile, Riggs and Ulfrode are in the shower. They are interrupted by the Wallem in its final form, which kills Riggs and then the girl. Daniels and Tennessee go in search of the alien and find the bodies in the shower, so Daniels decides that, and now she wants to face this bloodthirsty creature. She then asks Walter to close the doors to lure the creature into the room with the terraforming bay. Thus, a game of deceiving the creature into the bay room begins, and a fight ensues there. Daniels traps the alien in a vehicle and orders Walter to open the doors, causing decompression to pull everything out into space. However, the alien escapes and tries to attack Daniels, so she remains as bait to let the other vehicle fall onto the creature and finally kill it by flying out of the Covenant. For a moment, Tennessee thinks Daniels was also launched, but she hit on the edge. Now with everyone recovered, it's time to enter Creosono. Tennessee goes first, and when Daniels enters the pod, she reminds Walter of the cabin they agreed to build together. When the android doesn't recognize the promise, Daniels realizes it's not Walter, but actually, the truth is David, who cut his hand and disfigured his face to take Walter's place. Daniel screams as David activates the pod and puts her in cryosleep, while he proceeds with the next step of his plan. He enters the cryosleep bay with the colonists and vomits 2 neomorph embryos in their second stage to put them in cold storage alongside the humans, as he plans to contaminate the entire ship. Then, he records a log as Walter, stating that all crew members, except Tennessee and Daniels, were killed in the asteroid accident, and that the ship is still on its way to Origasius. Thus ends Alien Covenant, the 2017 science fiction film. Thanks to us, and I'll see you in the next video.